Hello and welcome to Two Mutables in a Pod. This podcast weaves our life experience with our love for astrology, alternative healing and Black culture. My name is Mimi.
And my name is Emily, and we are your hosts. And welcome to the Two Mutables in a Pod podcast.
Hello, and welcome to episode 8. This episode is all about the behind-the-scenes process, and as two independent collaborators and creators, we're still trying to find our feet in this creative space, whether it's production, whether that's editing, whether that's self-distribution. We really have been learning as we've been going, and the intention of today's episode is to help others and guide others through this creative process, and also reflect and share our experiences and the things that we have learned along this journey. So if you are anything like us and you are in the midst of your creative journey, we recommend that you listen to this episode with an open heart and an open mind. And we will be running through a Q&A style of questions, and hopefully you can learn a thing or two from us. When I was thinking of this topic and thinking about the work that we do as independent creators, one of the things that came to me was, do we fall into the category of being indie creators? And if so, what is an indie creator? So Mimi, I'd really like you, from the top of your head, doesn't need to be anything fancy or professional, but what is an indie creator? And do you think the work that we do on the pod falls within this definition?
That's really interesting. So are you saying that we together are independent creators and are indie creators?
Yes, what we do together as Two Mutables in Pod. But also, I guess you could extend that. If you wanted to cover that, you could look at that independently. But yes, the question was more so about what we do together here on the pod.
Okay. I would say yes, we are indie creators. And why I say that is because I think for us, we very much had to learn as we go. As you mentioned in your intro, we've got no financial backing, no kind of training behind us. It's just us and our devices and our voices. And I think that's what kind of sets like the indie creators apart from traditional creators, I guess, in some ways. Well, industry creators, not traditional, industry creators. So I think the fact that we do this 100% just us from start to finish, inside and out, that does make us indie in that sense. Yeah, because like when I think of indie, I think of like indie bands, indie music, and it's up like underground and like full speed, and they have to really work and graft to get their creative vision out there. And I think that's a reflection of the podcasting space as well.
Yes, and honestly, everything that you said really screams to what we do, like from figuring out even self-distribution. I know, obviously, you think about social media platforms, but when you're really trying to get a creative vision or project out, it's quite different. Like you really have to think about how can more people see this? How can we reach further people? And how can we share what we're doing, but on a larger platform? So when I think about no financial backing, pretty much having to get creative with, how we record, even using the equipment that we use to record, having to think outside the box because there isn't that funding or access to funding. I think it's something that really defines what we do. And I think it speaks to the organic nature of what we try and do with our podcast. So thank you for answering that. And it takes me on to the next question, which I really want to hone into this part, because if you're somebody who's starting out in your journey, or if you're somebody who's already got the experience under their belt, I think it's always great to have intentionality lead the way in whatever creative vision and project that you are leading. And I would love to know, Mimi, why intentionality, or why being intentional from the start is really important when starting a creative project. And how has being intentional for us helped us jump on board with this idea that we literally took from conversations on WhatsApp to making it a reality?
Conversation in the DMs on Instagram. I was like laughing and chuckling to myself because I think the last few months we've had so many tests that could have been like, well, that's it, we're throwing in the towel, like no more, like we're done with recording. And I think you said this today, actually, if it wasn't for the intention, the joint and shared intention that we have for Two Mutables in a Pod, as well as the joint vision that we have, if we didn't have that, I think it would have been so easy for us to just succumb to all the tests. So whether you're doing something solely for yourself or you're doing something in partnership with other people, I think it's really important for people to really understand why you're doing something, like what's your motivation and what's your driving factor. Because not only is life going to throw you curveballs, there's going to be curveballs with the actual production of things and the actual like setting up of things and the resourcing of things. And you kind of have to have the resolve with your intention in order to stay the course. So today's been one of many examples that we could give where we could have just been like, fuck it.
And, before we got into the recording, I was like to Mimi, some of these questions, they might trigger you because we are in the actual experience of the frustration of having to deal with this. And also, I will touch on to the fact that a lot of what we do, there is not a budget. So we are essentially running this as a no cost creative project that we're doing. But you speaking about what you just said about the why and the vision, because again, if it wasn't something that we jointly shared, I think we would have just said, you know what, deuces, like you said, this is all far too much for us. And I think this also goes back to one of the other questions that I would like to ask you, that in making a joint decision and being intentional from the start together, how has our decision to opt for monthly recordings as opposed to weekly, daily, or even fortnightly recordings helped us remain consistent as creators and podcasters in this space? And is it important to get clear on your commitment and capacity levels from the start? Or do you think it's okay to figure that out as you go?
Oh, my brain is like thinking about many things. But just going back to the question before,
Yes.
we, without saying too much, I think the intentionality that we shared at the start, I think somehow we end up regularly checking in unknowingly about that intention. And I think because we have that, it has allowed us a bit of breathing, well, me specifically, breathing space with future projects that I know link to the intention that we have, that I can't do in this season of life. So if it wasn't for the intention, we wouldn't be able to hold the challenges or the inequity sometimes that comes with, if we
Yes.
have that foundation of intentionality. So
Yes.
that doesn't, it kind of links to the other question, but I just wanted to link that back to the second question. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
It does. Like, sorry to even just like interject, but when you were saying it initially, I was like, wait, hold on, where are you going? And then I was like, I know where you're going. I know where you're going. And yes, you speak about this. Like, I almost want to say the weighing scales, that different curveballs will be thrown your direction and throw your way. But I think having the intentional reason as to why you're doing what you're doing, and knowing that there might be certain seasons where one partner is able to step up and follow that call, but in another season where the other partner is able to support and assist, and knowing that full reason why you're doing what you're doing and seeing that joint vision, being on the same page allows for one person, like you said, with the expansion, not going too much into it, but as things are expanding and growing, it's like, yes, I clock onto what you're trying to do. I see what you're trying to do. I'm going to give you the mantle to go ahead and do that. And I'm there and I'm supporting you. But at this current moment in time, I'm getting goosebumps even saying this, which, because I know it's prophetic, that at this current moment in time, I'm not able to commit in the ways that, you might need me to show up for this particular thing, particular expansion that is happening, but I wholeheartedly see and support the vision, and I trust you with that to lead. Yeah.
And I just got the goosebumps as well, because like that can be such a hard thing to even admit, to say like, I just can't do it right now. I really want to, but I just can't do it right now. And I think it really takes like, oh God, I can't get rid of the goosebumps. It takes like a special level of partnership to be able to have that conversation, feel the feels of it, feel the emotions of it, whatever, but still be like, okay, cool.
Yes.
Here's how we can kind of work together. Because again, I think we hold that intentionality so strong. And I think I'm realizing even more so now through this, I'm like, damn, like we have been really consistent with how intentional we have been, not just with the physical side of what we're doing, with the energetics of what we're doing.
Oh, yes. Wow. intentional with the energetics.
Mm.
And you say something about themes, because there are times where, you know, when like even the goosebumps are shared, like guys, and it's crazy because we're recording virtually, but the feeling, the energy can be felt through the screens. And, you know, as you're saying, that there are times where I'm like, I want my homegirl on this, but I understand that, you know, and you're saying being able to feel the field, but knowing that the longer term vision, the longer term goal, the intention behind why we started what we're starting, why we're growing what we're growing, I understand that there are going to be times, there are going to be seasons where you're going to be able to take that. I'm going to be able to pass on the baton to you. You're going to be able to pass the baton over to me, and we work collaboratively.
Honestly, I could speak so much about this because
Mhm.
literally everything that you've just said, and I think it's been beautifully difficult for me to experience this, but I've seen the way that me having to lean into that in this season of my life, this is what I can and versus can't do.
Yes.
Seeing how it then opens up the other relationships that I have in my life where I am having to have conversations like, I can't do this right now, but the other person's like, well, we're a partnership. Like,
Mm,
I'll do it. Like, no
yes.
biggie, no sweat. But for me and my little Capricorn moon, I'm like, but I should be doing it. I should be responsible. You don't have to do it. But actually now I'm having to learn, and I do attribute like our relationship and like how we have grown together as a massive kind of training ground for being able to kind of learn how to oscillate between what is my responsibility, what's our responsibility.
Yes. I love how you said a training ground, because I think we shared this pretty much through most of the episodes, but everything that we discuss here is because we have lived through this experience. And I think that's one of the key things that, you know, stands out to me, that we share things because we have the first-hand experience, and we're not coming to sell you dreams. We're not coming to sell you fairy tales or nightmares. But we're here to tell you what we've experienced. And I think, as you're saying, even with myself, like I see, you know, we're going to come on to this a bit later, but I see the ways in which I've had to grow, I've had to evolve, you know, even when we have had disagreements, even when it has been uncomfortable, even when my heart and soul wants you to do a particular thing, but I need to understand and respect. And you know, you speak about your Capricorn moon and how you naturally operate, that this is my responsibility, that this is what I should be doing. But in this season of your life, you're being required to be still and also accept what you can and what you cannot commit to. And I think that is, to be honest, I feel like in some ways, because we've spoken about how Saturn and Pisces being in your eighth house had really taken you through the ringer. But I think in some ways, there are some of these safeguards that have arisen as a result of some of these, you know, testing grounds, trials and tribulations that have arisen from this transit. And I really appreciate you also bringing in the astro. I love how you interweave the astro into your conversation. And I really appreciate the vulnerability in this conversation. This is why I feel that when we collaborate in the space together, we're doing so from a place where we're channeling honesty. But I love how nothing is off cards, even if it's a difficult experience to speak about. We will touch on it, as we're going to go through a bit later on. But
Definitely.
do you have anything else that you'd like to add to this, or can I move on to the next question?
I think I need you to repeat the question.
The next question really is about our joint decision to opt for monthly recordings as opposed to weekly, fortnightly, or daily uploads. And has this helped us remain consistent in the creative work that we do as podcasters? And is it important to get clear on commitment and capacity levels from the start? Or is this something that you can kind of figure along as and when you go with your collaborator?
Yeah. You know what? I think for us, it helped, and it still does help us to gain structure. Like we established quite early on how often we're going to upload. And I think
Yes.
maybe, and I could be misremembering it, so please do correct me. I think maybe initially when we first started, maybe there was a bit more hesitation of how we're going to navigate it. I think I might have wanted to do more frequently and you wanted to do monthly. Is that right?
I can't remember, but I'm going to take what you're saying as the golden truth, because my memory is, whew. So, oh my God, that's very
I I
interesting.
think I think I might have wanted to do slightly more.
Yeah.
You maybe said no, maybe let's just start monthly. And looking back, oh my gosh, best decision, best advice ever, because we are full in a month.
Yes.
It's not just getting the recordings out, it's the whole process that goes into it, which I'm sure you're probably going to ask about as well. So I'm glad that from the start we really did iron out what is the structure, what's that going to look like, and then everything unfolded as a result of that.
Yes.
I think, yes, for anyone who's listening, who's thinking about like starting up their own kind of podcast or any kind of creative thing, it is important when you're collaborating to discuss your capacity at the start. However, I think what we've both had to learn is how much our capacity changes as life has changed. Even just like a small but kind of big example is when we've both had illnesses, and then we've both, like, one week you've been unwell and then the next week I've been unwell, and like we've not had physical contact with one another, but it's just so happened that life has taken us out because of illnesses, for example. Like us really needing to obviously communicate that, which we do, but to just like be honest with each other about that. So whilst, yes, please have your discussions about capacity beforehand, also give grace and give space for when it changes, because my God, does it change.
You took the example right out my mouth that I wanted to use, which is the illnesses, like when we both, and it's like, I think it was in February, I remember. It was like, it was you, then it was me. And for anybody listening out, that you might have deadlines, you might have, I want to say goalposts in which you want to push out an episode, or you want to release or record an episode. But as he has rightfully said, that life can happen and you can't predict illnesses. You can't predict things that are out of your control. And even if things are in your control, sometimes shit just happens. And I think this is something that I've learned. And I want to say, like, the word that you use, which is like our testing ground, did you say, or playground, where you've learned, I've had to learn a lot that life can change, like even for myself. And I never saw the illness coming, but it took me, it took me far to the left. And, you just being accommodative, being able to be like, you know what, we'll hit the drawing board once we're both back to like good health. And we did. We were able to then record when we both were healthier to record. And I feel like a lot of the work that I've done in my personal life has been independent. So like even when I've worked with organizations or just like even uni work and things like that, I've done a lot of work independently. And I remember there were like certain decisions that I was doing, but Meme was like, but we need to communicate about that. And because I've been so used to just being an independent creator, like you run your own Instagram page, you decide when a post goes out. It really did take me being in the actual experience in the testing ground for me to realize that there are certain things that, you do actually have to consider, that you do have to adapt. And I thought I knew what the word collaboration meant. And I think, when you start out, it's like, yeah, we're partnering, it's collaboration. But when you really are in the season of collaboration, like I think I can now say, and I'm still going to learn more about that term, but I feel that I can now say that, yes, collaboration means meeting in the middle. It means compromising. It means understanding. It means extending grace. It means also putting aside the ways that you might want to do certain things by, if there's a particular thing that I feel that, we need to action, I might be like, let me go ahead and do that. But you can't do that when you're working in collaboration with somebody. And you even flagging that to me, that and being like, you know what, Emily, I can understand why your thought process was like this, but it's important to run things through me. Let's have a discussion. I was like, because I'm not used to that. I'm used to just doing the work on my own and getting the task done. And then, yeah, that's it. So yes.
I get that completely. And I think it's weird because, again, similar to yourself, it's weird, similar but different, because I am an independent practitioner and I have been for years, and I don't have a team to work with. But I guess the difference is I work with people, so I have to collaborate with people. I can't,
Yes.
and I wouldn't make decisions for my clients because I need to collaborate with them on that level. And I think that's why communication is such a big thing, or has been a big thing for us. But when you were speaking, I was being reminded of, like, there have been times when, and this continues to come up, and it will always continue to come up, where one of our intuitions or our gut is saying, no, but we need to do this, we need to do this, and the other person might not necessarily feel that. But
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we need to, again, I love the way that you defined collaboration, by the way. We need to meet in the middle somewhere so that,
Yes.
again, it's that I trust your intuition. And we had to have a discussion about that, as in, like, I'm not questioning your intuition here. I get it.
Yeah.
It's just right now I don't feel it. But if
Yeah.
your intuition says it, okay, I need to hop on board. But again, that can only happen through communication.
Yes. And we are going to touch on that because that is something, looking at how we evolve and even move past, but also learn from these experiences. I think there's something for listeners to learn from, but also reflect on with their own personal experiences. The next set of questions really kind of focus on post-production, editing, and the and also the cost associated with running a podcast, or no cost associated with running a independent podcast. So my first question to you is, what is your very first memory of editing for the podcast? And did you have any prior experience or knowledge, or did you just hit the ground running?
I had experience in editing because I had edited my own video content, as in like mid to long form,
Yes.
longish form. But I didn't have any experience of the platform that we were using to record. What was my first memory? I I remember, okay, I remember editing by like doing, what's it called when you segment
What,
it.
clipping?
You have to, like, you break the clip, you split the clips in order to
Yes.
like take a portion out. And it took me like a few times editing to realize that you could edit using the transcript, and that made it so much easier. And I remember texting you one day and being like, oh, I didn't know that you could do this. And you were like, how have you been doing it before? And I was like, wow, this is a game changer for me. And that helped, and I had
Yes.
to learn that. I had to learn that,
Mhm.
so through that process. But the cost, is it like the cost of like the behind the scenes?
So we're going to get onto that. That was just more so this quite, yeah. So we're going to go onto that, but more so the overriding topic, which is, yes, the cost associated with running a podcast or running a creative project. But yes, I think, I remember that because you were like, oh my gosh, Emily, like, you can do this. And I was like, girl, how have you been doing? And do you know what? Because there's no manual, I know. So we use Riverside to record, or should I say we used to? We used to. And, you get the basic welcome to Riverside video, but you're pretty much on your own. I mean, unless you're going out there to, watch tutorials and things like that, which are great. I think there are some great creators who do stuff to help and educate and inform people. But I, likewise yourself, I feel like my experience from editing, I had no prior knowledge aside from like doing stuff on Instagram or CapCut. So going into this ball game of like audio editing was different for me. And I think even you just saying we need a jingle, I was like, what's a jingle? What's that? And, the fact that you even have the knowledge that, you need a bit of an intro before you get into the podcast recording, like it can't just start, and just having an understanding really did help. I think it guided us because I didn't know that stuff, like an intro and an outro. And I was like, damn, Mimi knows her stuff. Like, how does she know this? And I know Mimi doesn't see herself to be like tech coded, but in my eyes, she knows a lot.
No way. I'm at war with technology at the moment.
We will get on to, but my next question really centers on whether it's possible to manage and produce a podcast with no budget, and are there any limitations to reach and impact that small creators, independent creators like ourselves, might need to consider if there's no budget in place?
Big question, because we have done this with little to no budget. And is possible, but we have had a lot of teething issues along the way that sometimes, I mean, we've discussed it, like we wonder whether if we had adequate resources, would that change the way that we record, or the sound quality, or whatever kind of goes into production. So I would say, like, for people starting out, it's important for you to just get to grips with you getting confident and getting yourself out there. So it doesn't matter about the cost of things and have you got the right piece of technology. exercise your right to express and just get comfortable with that process first. And then you can start to allow things to kind of snowball and grow. So it's kind of like a yes and a no type of thing.
Exercise your right to express, like, and get comfortable with that.
We have.
And yeah, we did. And to be honest, I tell you guys, like, I think when you listen to our first ever episode, which is like season 1, episode 1, I did not have a clue about how certain things, like, Mimi was like, no, we can edit things out. And I just didn't know these things. And we recorded and we released, should I say, our first episode in November 2024. And it's May 2026. We are still learning, but the growth has been present. And had we not taken that first step, be it shaky, be it stuttering, because I can stutter for the life of me. And, one thing that I really have to thank Mimi for is that you reminded me that these things are human to include. Like, for me, I would want to edit that out. I didn't want people to, like, not that I didn't want people to know, but I just didn't see it as, like, that didn't seem put together. And maybe this is the Virgo stuff coming out in me. But you just reminding me in that moment when we had that disagreement where it's like, this is what keeps things human. I realized that it also helps me relax my shoulders when I edit. Yes, I still have teething issues with editing, but I know that now I don't feel so about keeping those things in because it's part of the human process. And had we not had this experience, I wouldn't have got to this level of comfortability with that.
Which is important. Like, it's so important to just allow yourself the space to be messy with it, but just show up with it. Because again, like, there's so many times and so many examples where we could have just like tapped out. And like even like last time I was editing, I know this about myself, but for some reason, maybe my senses were a bit heightened. But I was like, whenever someone speaks, I'm really like, like I'm really, because I'm really like locked in and I'm really like acknowledging, I'm really trying to follow the story as well, or whatever's being said. And for the first time, last time with editing, I mean, I had a million and one issues, but I was like, I really want to edit all of this out. But then I thought to myself, how will I edit out 2 hours of It's impossible. And I'm not going to set myself an impossible task. Like, for real. But these things do come up, and I think it can be confronting, like, of yourself.
Yes.
Because you're like, I didn't realize I did that, or oh, I knew I did that, but it's hard to hear when you do something. It's like, ew, it gives you a little bit the ick, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And as you're speaking, I'm like, in some shape or form, given the fact that we have spoken about our Chiron wounding, do you feel that this whole process, the behind the scenes process, having to listen to yourself as you're editing out an episode, listening and, reflecting and being able to pick out the oohs and the ahs and I just want to hide under a rock and not be seen because how embarrassing does this sound? Has this helped improve the Chiron wounding or the relationship that you have with Chiron? Or do you feel like this has at times flared up that wounding for you in particular seasons when you have been at the forefront of editing?
Interesting question. Because I'm going to reflect it back to you. I can see how it's helped your Chiron, or at least I assume it has. But for me, and again, I think we're going to go on to this, I feel like I've had a bit of a reverse kind of process happen where I'm so comfortable and I'm so good with what we do, despite the little annoyances that occur along the way in terms of like when I listen back to myself.
Yes.
But I've taken a step back with the visual aspect of media and the visibility aspect of social media. Like, I'm assuming you're going to pick up on this.
Yes.
when you keep in touch with the stats and the data and the analytics, and I'm just like, girl, it is what it is. Like, not that I don't care, it's just I'm trying not to get too wrapped up in it. But that I think is my Chiron. So I don't think it's necessarily helped or healed. I think I'm just more like, I'm pausing with it. What about you?
Do you know what? As I was listening to you speak, it's like, I think there's awareness that this could potentially flare up that wounding. So it's like, I know you exist, but I'm parking you here. You're there, but you're not my business. And to be honest, rightfully, With myself, 100%, like metrics, which we're going to get onto, as you know, and we're going to look at, part of your analog journey too, because I think that's really interesting. But metrics and, statistics and things like that, it flares up that recognition wound. Some people might say it's instant gratification. Other people might say it's a visibility wound. But I see it in twofold. Like, as you were speaking, I was seeing a mirror. Although although I might not have subconsciously recognized this, the editing process that we've been doing behind the scene, the post-production stuff, has been a reflective mirror. Like, I've been able to see myself and hear myself in real time. And, sometimes I've just had to get comfortable with the stuttering. I've had to get comfortable if I've mispronounced a word or misspelt a word. And I can really beat myself up about those minor things, Chiron and Virgo. However, I've had to, as a result, also gain that comfortability with just knowing that this is part of the human process. So I think it's twofold. Like, my wound flares up when I feel that we're not being recognized despite the greatness that we are producing. But then also in the same time, I've also been able to accept my flaws, that really they they take me around the ringer as an overthinker. But my next question, which I know is going to make you laugh, or maybe not make you laugh, it might make you sad, given what we've gone through. But what editing tools or recording platforms have we struggled with the most? And why do you think we have struggled with these platforms?
God, sorry, it's like resist the urge to be sarcastic. So what editing tools and what struggle?
Yes, so what editing tools or recording platforms have we struggled with the most? And why do you think this has been the case, that we have struggled with this the most? Do resources play a role? Do access to certain networks play a role? What are some of the reasons why you think we have struggled with certain platforms?
Okay. So Emily's already mentioned we were using Riverside, which I think is a very popular, well-known podcasting app to use or platform to use, that has access. You can access it for free as well as have an upgraded membership. And that was our main thing, and that was for recording and editing. We had a good run, I would say, with it. Like we tried, but we just encountered a lot of issues from both, like so many different angles. I think from my perspective, it was connectivity issues, not being able to come on to the platform with my camera on, or like not being able to see Emily, which is really important to me, like when I
Yes.
talk to people. Um, and then like that kicking you out, and then it messing up with the transcript, which then alters the way that you then edit. I feel like we end up having a lot of issues with the recording slash editing platforms. And I think for the most part, I held on to Riverside. Emily was ready to get rid of it a while back. A while back. But I was like,
Yeah.
no, but I love editing here. And
Yes.
I really didn't want it to be true that we needed to migrate elsewhere. But Emily called out a long time ago. She knew for those listening.
I
She,
was done with that platform,
yeah,
man.
very
Yeah.
clearly done. But I think some of the issues that we've had maybe could have been resolved if we had a pro membership.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, I think it could have been resolved if and not necessarily you because I don't know, but if I had like the latest device that could withstand how much energy is required, how much bandwidth is required in order to record up to the cloud, which Emily just taught me today what that is. Um, Again, this is all about financial resource,
Yes.
and it's. I'd love to know your kind of perspective on it, but I would always remember when we both watched Black Mirror and that episode of like upgrade for this and upgrade in
Yes.
order to access that, and I think
Hmm.
we wrote about it at the time.
Yes.
And I always get taken back to that episode, and then Emily's post on Medium about that episode, her reflections. I always take my mind transports me back to there, and I question and I think, gosh, do things fail us? It is in technology,
Hmm.
applications, platforms. Do they fail us on purpose so that we can then subscribe to their paid platform. And then I go down the whole political aspect of, is this just to disenfranchise those of us who cannot afford and don't have the access to these resources? Is this excluding us? Is this isolating us? What about those of us who just want to be creative? Where's our home? Where do we sit? Where do we land? But yeah, I'd love to know your perspective and experience.
No, these are real valid considerations. And, as we're saying it, we're telling it all. As you've mentioned, financial resource does play a key role. It almost seems that consumerism cannot coincide or does not go hand in hand with creativity, particularly when you have subscription-based models. Now, we're not saying that people who create these platforms shouldn't get their pretty penny. I think, we're glad that you are able to make something, you are able to make an income from these platforms. But rightfully so, as you've mentioned, do people who don't have access to these resources, do people who are disenfranchised, do the marginalized, where do they go? Where is the space for them? And at this current moment in time, I mean, people might beg to, or people might want to ask us, but isn't the pro plan something that you guys can just group in together and pay monthly? And it's something that each creator has I want to say, different commitments that they're able to commit to and what they can't commit to. And for us, it is a joint decision that this is not financially viable for where we're at, because we don't generate income from what we're creating. We are pretty much in the foundational stages. So whilst some people are of the thought of the school that you need to invest in order to see returns, and Mimi's face looks
I'm sorry.
and I see this quite a lot on Reddit discussions, that some people just like, well, you just need to pay for the premium plan and that's it. And it almost seems as if you click your fingers and all the problems that you've had with this particular recording platform disappears. But as Mimi has rightfully said, through watching Black Mirror, through, reflections on that episode, which I'll never forget. And isn't it called Rivermind? I think it's called Rivermind.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think it's called. I need to check this. Hold on. Wait, Rivermind. It definitely, yeah. Is it called Rivermind? Black Mirror. It is. And we're using Riverside. Yeah, see, it's the fictional experimental medical tech company featured in season 7, episode 1 of Black Mirror, titled Common People. And I agree with Mimi. I've always said this, even with Apple products, although I do use Apple products. So maybe you can say I've fallen into the consumerist trap. But there is almost this thing that if you don't pay for subscription, I do think certain apps, certain platforms begin to tweak things. They start to make things quite hard for the everyday person to access. And it has been a challenge because there isn't the luxury or the privilege of having excess resource. Because as we were saying, we've spoken about the power of advocacy. 99.9% of the time, we're trying to expend those finances to other areas of our lives. This isn't an area where we can do so, but we still want to show up and create. So with having these barriers, I think to some extent, as Mimi said quite early on, if we didn't have the vision, if we didn't have the shared drive, if we didn't have the shared passion for what we're doing, this could have been a very much see you later, we're done. And I really understand creators, independent creators who aren't receiving funding, who don't have big, organizations backing them, who are really struggling with visibility. Why they just pack it in and say they're done with social media, because it is something that can break your heart. But I agree with you, and I am of the same thought that some of these platforms, this is part of, how we speak about pyramid schemes, and if you just do this, then you get this. Like, I think these ploys do form part of these pyramid schemes, although they're dressed in corporate labels and titles because they are, big corporations. However, who knows, maybe we will find out a bit more about underground platforms that really do encourage and support creators like ourselves who are independent creators. But for the time being, we are having to think outside the box. And I think that can at times throw you off course. So that's something to bear in mind. If you are a creator, if you are looking to start your podcast, whatever creative venture that you have in mind, that if you don't have access to resource, if you don't have financial backing, you might want to learn the art of pivoting, or you might be forced to learn the art of pivoting whilst you're in the experience. But I hope your vision holds you strong and roots you down strong so that you don't lose sight of why you originally started.
Amen.
So on to the next question, which is about scripting. And my question to you is scripting for podcast recording something that is necessary, or is it possible to go with the flow? And if so, can somebody who is starting out or somebody who's even experienced in the game learn to strike a balance between the two, should they wish to?
How do I answer this question? Because I think initially, when we started, we were very consistent in scripting and very consistent in like giving enough time so that the other person could like prep for it. But I think as we've navigated through, particularly this season, I don't know if it's been a time and capacity thing or it's been, I don't know what it is, but I feel like, particularly myself, I have leaned less on scripting and it has been challenging. Like now that
Yes.
I can acknowledge and I can see before the recording how it can be like, oh my gosh, like what are we doing? What direction is this going?
Yeah.
And how scripting can provide a bit of a safety net. But I think for me, some of my most favorite recordings that aren't Astro based, because I feel like we need to prepare for Astro, are the ones where that we've just free falled and there's just been that
Aw.
space to say whatever comes up and say whatever's on the heart, in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the ones where you felt like you needed something and you show up and then I'm like, but there's so much wisdom that came out of that and you didn't have to prepare for that. So I think there is an element of needing to strike a balance. It's good
Mm-hmm.
to have an overview, but maybe have the space for
Yes.
the channeling, as you said, and the wisdom to come through. Yeah, I'm curious, like, how you would answer this question now.
So, and one thing I always love about what we do is just that we're able to offer perspective and like, I think from my end, quite from the beginning, I think not so much now, as Mimi has mentioned, because we've evolved into season 2. I feel like each recording is a testing ground for me, as Mimi has rightfully said, but it's also a way for me to learn and literally come outside of my comfort zone. So in the times where we have literally decided to just go off script and follow, I'm following Mimi's lead. She is leading the ship, but I'm listening to what comes up in my spirit. I've realized that although I can be hard on myself because I don't feel that I sound knowledgeable enough on that particular area, like when Mimi when she's finished editing and she's like shared parts of what's gone on in the recording, she's like, it's made me think that, oh, damn, maybe I was just being really hard on myself. And I think it was the most recent recording that we just did prior to this, where it's like, no, you actually were like, you were dropping gems. But to me, I was like, I don't feel like I know much on this area because it's very much out of my depth. But as a person, I feel like when we first started, scripting was my safety net. I felt safe. I felt like, yes, I knew what I was saying because I had pre-planned and pre-thought and I'd, overly organized. And I think I still script, but I loosen the reins a bit. I allow myself to mess up. I allow myself to maybe not include a particular part and see what comes up for myself. But scripting, I would like to say if you can strike a balance between the
Yeah.
two, that is ideal because you might be thrusted into moments where you have to literally perform without a script. And there might be moments where you do have the luxury and the pleasure of relying on a script, whether that's technology issues that you might encounter, whether that's just also, having to follow the impulse of your own spirit. I mean, there are certain episodes that we've recorded where it's like, okay, this is literally us freestyling off what spirit is coming and revealing to us, what you literally said, channeling to us. And I think I've had to get comfortable. And that's why I say I think I've been tested on my comfort zone, on areas that, I can think about a few topics, dreams like that, you know, if you've listened to, you should listen to that recording if you haven't. But that's an area where, you know, where I feel that because I struggle with that in my personal life, it's an area that made me, when I saw the title, I was like, my stomach, I could feel it in my
Yeah.
stomach. But I still showed up. And I think the way that you guide the episodes, knowing that, because I do quite openly share that, you know, and you know from our personal conversations that, you know, there are certain things that are a bit like touchy for me. But I think in doing what we're doing and discussing the taboo, there's no way that we're not going to peel off certain scab layers, certain band-aids that we've covered our wounds with in order to get to the root cause, the surface, where the actual bleeding is taking place. So I think striking a balance between the two if you can, but I think that also comes through experience, trial and error, and testing things out.
Definitely. I will say though, like I am mindful sometimes of how much you are having to extend outside of your comfort zone and how far you're having to go outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I'm like, oh, it's fine. Like this is like, yeah, it's fine. Everybody's got it. It's personal development. But there's other moments where I was like, is this too
Yes.
far? Like, is Emily actually okay? Like the last episode, I was
Yes.
like, I had a wobble and I was like, okay, I'll change it. Like, it's fine. Like, we can do another topic because I was like,
Yes.
maybe this is too far
Wow.
outside of Emily's comfort zone. And it was really, I don't even have the words, but when you said to me, no, let's see where it goes. Let's stick to it. I was like, oh, okay. And seeing you reframe it allowed me to like fully communicate what was in my brain as to how I
Yeah.
saw it going. And then that I think loosened the reins, but allowed it to flow in a way that I think was quite beautiful.
I love the title that you chose. And, you know, like you're saying, I think initially when I saw the topic already, the womb being something that if you listen to, and again, you must listen to episode 8, but when you listen to this episode, you'll realize that it's an area of my life where there has been a disconnect. So for me, I sometimes go into panic mode because I feel that what am I going to say about something that I don't even know how to articulate? But as we were communicating prior to that recording, I didn't want us to abandon it. Like something was just like, we still need to discuss it. There's still ways for people to, you know, relate to this story, relate to our experiences. And as we've said, like we often meet in the middle, but we come from different ends of the spectrum. And that's one thing that kept ringing in my mind, or one thing that kept coming to the forefront of my mind. And I appreciate the fact that you were even like very vocal about, I don't feel comfortable and I don't want to push you outside of the comfort zone that feels like it's a bit too much for you. And I'm aware of what your limits could potentially be, but I'm also aware of where it's like, no, I don't want you to feel unsafe. And I appreciate the fact that you have those safeguards in your mind. And I'm glad that we were able to reframe the conversation, but still touch on things that were relevant and very much needed.
Most definitely.
So I know this one's going to make you laugh, but I would love to know if we've ever had a marketing budget. And if not, do you feel like this is something that people need if they're starting out, if they're trying to find where they stand as a podcaster, as an independent creator? Is a marketing budget something that is essential? Or can you find creative ways to loop your way through promotion and visibility?
Very interesting. We have never had a marketing budget. We have never had one. I don't think people need it initially to start. And my reason why is I think the absence of a budget for us helped us to establish our voice and establish our messaging and take full ownership and full autonomy over that. And I think it's protective in a way because it protects our intention, our vision, and the things that are unfolding behind the scenes that we're creating. So I think it's strengthened our voice in some way. And we have done a lot to kind of take pressure away from this is what we need to do and this is how many times a week we need to do it and this is what platform we need to do it on. So I think initially for people it's okay like to kind of like figure stuff out without needing a budget, a marketing budget. At some point it would be great if we had one, of course, like I would welcome it, I'd love it. And it would be nice to have, but I wouldn't say right now that it's essential. What might be kind of useful, not necessarily essential, is maybe the knowledge and the training around what goes into this marketing machine, what makes so more kind of the courses, education side of things, which I know you have done, taken like time to see things and time to look, time to go to webinars and stuff like that. But you've done that on the job.
Yeah.
It's not as if like someone
Yes.
paid you. It's not as if someone like said you must do this. It's things that you have encountered that you thought this might be useful, or you've watched YouTube videos on how to do XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
So those things can be accessed at a minimal cost or no cost at times. And I think that's more important initially rather than the full on marketing budget. Yeah. What
I
do you
agree with.
think?
No, I was literally just going to say I agree with you, because I think sometimes people could feel or can feel held back because they don't have a particular marketing budget, or they can't pay for ads, they can't pay for promo. But you rightfully mentioned something, and I completely forgot about that there are free resources. Like I use, for example, WordPress has a mini course. It's nothing fancy, nothing great. You're not going to come out being a digital marketer after this, but it helps increase your awareness, and it's about SEO searching. And that's one thing that I have taken a liking to, particularly about, increasing visibility, reaching wider audiences, and also I want to say utilizing and maximizing the content that we share as an audio only podcast. And I think it's important that if you are starting out in this space, not to get bunged up about how much you can pay into marketing, and do you have enough for Google ads, and how do you get onto this platform, because I think it can then serve as a deterrent, because you might feel that you don't have enough. Instead, there are ways around this, utilizing networks, utilizing community groups, utilizing the free resources that exist online on platforms like TikTok, YouTube, whatever, tickles your fancy, even good old Reddit. I think there are ways for you to find nooks and crannies so that you don't have to dent your pocket so early on, particularly if you already don't have that financial capacity to do so. So yeah, I pretty much echo you that yes, in the long run, maybe when you have kind of established yourself, it would, how there are different layers to making a cake, or when you're seasoning food, you might add in the salt, then you might go in and add the oregano later. Like there's layers to this shit. And I think it's important for you not to jump straight to level 6 before you've even encountered level 1 or level 0, because sometimes you've got to start from the ground up. So that is that question. The next one, which kind of trickles onto this, knowing that we do record monthly, have we always known that we would gear towards longer form content as opposed to short form content? And how do we navigate this divide as we grow, as we evolve, and also to suit different platforms that we have a presence on?
No, we didn't initially know. I think initially we wanted to be a 60-minute. Did you want it to be short?
So like I said, I was a newbie to this thing. I didn't know a thing or two about podcasting, but I remember you saying like the typical mark is like 60 minutes. Like that's what you generally see. And I know there was an episode that was running over 60 minutes. I think it was like 60 minutes plus an additional 30. So like an hour 30. And I was like, no, like the 60 minutes. You said the 60 minutes. And I was really like trying to cut out the hot seat questions. I was like, it doesn't fit into the 60 minutes. And then and we had a dispute about this. Mimi was like, I know I said this, but there's room for flexibility. Like, we really need to keep the hot seat. I was like, no, it's not the 60 minutes. I mean, in my head, I was like, you know what? I kind of felt that we would, because we weren't uploading as frequently, I felt that we would, in some shape or form, run over the ordinary like 30 minutes or the 45 minutes. We'd gear towards the more longer form content. The time frames, I was completely walked about and had no knowledge. I had to learn on the job. So now that I know, like some of our episodes, can sometimes border like an hour 45 minutes, and I'm no longer frantic about it. I'm not like, oh my god, who's gonna listen? Because I know we don't throw, or I don't want to say we don't thrust content down people's throat daily. weekly, fortnightly, it's a monthly thing. And we try to keep our uploads frequent, so that's every month. But I know that we as people, we aren't, what we share and what we disseminate isn't to be digested in the short form sense. So I
Yeah,
think I've made peace with that. I don't
yeah,
know about
yeah.
yourself.
I think initially, like, I was at the 60-minute mark, but then
Hmm.
once we started to get into it, and I realized, God, we have so much to say. Like, we just have so much to talk about. Like,
Yes.
I was like, it's fine, like, because I
Hmm.
feel like it's useful things that we're talking about. We're not just yapping for the sake of yapping. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
it's either relatable, or there's like a slight teaching moment. There's just that common shared experience that I feel like people can connect to. So
Hmm.
I became okay with it being longer than 60 minutes very quickly. But I think something that you guided us both on and you suggested to implement was the mini clips, and how we can kind of capture a shorter version of what we are discussing to link people back to the episode, to kind of, for people to digest in a different way, but for people to kind of loop into the episodes in between the month. I think
Hmm.
help to kind of break things up in a way, because I do think a lot of our work, yes, as you said, is suited for long form, but I like the idea of us being like people listening to us and taking their time to listen to us, or spreading the podcast out through the week or throughout the month. So stop and start, stop and start. But then the short clips are very bite-sized. Like, for me, the clips that we have chosen, we never consult each other on, should I use this audio? Should I use that? But everyone I hear the clip, I'm like, perfect.
Yes.
It
Yes.
just summarizes, or it's like a
Mhm.
real standout moment. So yeah, I can't remember the question, but
So you answered the question, and I share your sentiments, because there are times where I've listened to when Mimi's done the mini clips, and I'm like, oh, how did you know this particular moment to pick out? And that's why you go back, you mentioned this, it's the energy work. In as much as we're doing a lot of the physical production, energy keeps the wheels and the oils running and turning. And I think that is the fuel to the fire that, and even trust. Like, I know that I might not see what you're doing, but I know that clip's going to resonate. And I might not even be hands on with that particular episode because that's where you're leading, but I know that you will deliver. And I think you take your time as well. You're following the impulse of your own spirit, but your spirit is guiding you to a mini clip that will touch the hearts of the audience that are listening to us, or the people who can relate to our story. And one thing that you spoke about early on is how, because of the lack of resource or the ability to have in-person video recordings, because ideally,
yeah.
touch wood, that would be a dream for us to be able to actualize. But at this current moment in time, we have chosen to be an audio only podcast to take away the strain of having to present a certain way, having to have things look a particular way. We just wanted to be able to show up as how we are and express our story as storytellers. And one thing that I do want to say is that you were very key initially, which is one thing that my Chiron, well, I'm going to say my Chiron and Virgo, I want to say all my placements that deal with my many internal issues was like, hell no. But you were like, we need our faces on that cover, because yes, we're going to be an audio podcast, but that takes away the visual element, and people do connect to human stories and human faces. And
Yeah.
I remember you saying that I don't want it to hide. I was not ready for that. I don't want that. And that's why, one thing I always say, it's just that in as much as, yes, we are doing healing work here, you are in some shape or form also helping in healing me, because I didn't want to be seen. I said to Mimi, let's put cartoon faces or something up. And Mimi was like, no, they need to see our faces. And I was like, faces? What do you mean our faces? And I can't thank you enough, because given the fact that we don't have the video element, we have had to get creative and think outside of the box, how we can engage our audiences outside of that 1 monthly upload. How can we keep people looped back in outside of the main uploads that we have? And I think even just having that mini clip clip, even having those quotes. These are ways to really, and I think they're really creative ways. We're doing it without a budget. And we do it with passion. We do it with drive. We do it even when we are dealing with life behind the scenes. And I think for me, I know that these resources, I know that these clips will go on to help and, heal other people. But I think the reason why the short form, long form, and be making peace with the fact that we know our episodes are going to be a bit longer. But here are bite-sized clips if you need bite-sized information, or here are mini quotes that you can process in your own time. But when you're ready to take the next step and listen to and absorb longer form content that we have, here it is. And I think one thing that we are both very intentional about, and one thing that we really care about, is that we don't want to thrust content down your throat. We don't want to be like, absorb, or, it's in your face, in your face, in your face. We really want you to be able to just be. Even if you listen to 5 minutes of a recording, you say, you know what, this is too much for me. I need to come back to it. This is the podcast. This is the space for you to be able to do so. And I think that's why, I've gone off in a tangent, but I feel like that's one thing that I really wanted to say.
It's important though, and I think
Mm-hmm.
the way that we have established the way that we create, I feel like it's very authentic to who we are, and I think it's important that our work reflects who we are, but we have the knowing and the desire to be open to creating in a different way. So like Emily said, of course we would love to be a video podcast at one point, but we know where we are right now.
Yeah.
And we also know how we would want a video or visual podcast to look or to sound like, and we know what that comes with. So for now, we're okay, we're good where we're at. So
Yes, and I think that's important for you as a creator, an independent creator, or whatever you are in this digital social media space, or creative space, that you acknowledge that you are okay with where you're at. And you make peace with that, and you acknowledge that, and you understand that there might come a time where you're able to expand and grow. But your beginnings don't have to look glamorous and all put together. That's something that, I just want to echo off what Mimi has said. And, I guess my last point on this part of post-production is, as an audio-only podcast, have we experienced any limitations, or do you believe there are any limitations around being an audio-only podcast?
This is so interesting because literally seconds, okay, maybe like a minute before we came to record, I saw a video YouTube short of someone who's a podcaster and YouTuber turned podcaster, and I was watching their mini clip, well, YouTube short, and I was like, I love the way that they've edited this together, but they're an in-person recording. Question again? Oh my God, baby.
No, it's okay. Are there any limitations to being just an audio-only podcast?
So I was admiring this, but also acknowledging where we're at. And I was almost sent it to you, but then I thought if I send it to you, I'm going to enter us into the trap of comparison. So I'm not going to send it. But I did have this thought, and I have had this thought. I had this thought earlier in our creation stage, was, are we limiting ourselves by, as in the reach and the audience and the network that we can potentially gain by being an audio only podcast? And I don't know why I used to think that, because when I think about it, majority of podcasts I listen to are audio. If it comes up as a video, I'm saying switch to audio. So I don't know why that I had that perceived limitation.
Do you feel that comes from knowing the bigger picture of where you see us at?
Maybe.
Or do you feel that there could be, I know you mentioned elements of comparison mode with the clip that you were looking at on YouTube Shorts earlier on. And do you feel that, when you see other creators, that we could also excel doing this because, you know the vision and you see it and you understand. I feel like also there's no denying the reach when people can put a name to a face. I see this with creators like, Nella Rose. People love her. They love her personality because they can see it.
True.
And I think, in as much as you're saying with podcasts that there is the standard norm that most times they are going to be audio based, I think because we understand that we want to connect with people on a personal level, it almost feels like there's this limit. I don't know I want to say the algorithm, but then you know my thoughts on it. I think sometimes the suppression of audio only content versus video content
Agree.
is a real thing when
Agree.
it comes to visibility and promotion,
Yeah.
self-distribution of what we do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that plays a massive role into how I perceive things as well. But even though I've said that about how I listen to audio podcasts, there
Yes.
are moments where like scroll Facebook, I scroll Facebook and then I'll see clips of podcasts or I'll see creators and I'm like, oh, I really like seeing them and I like seeing their
Yeah.
facial expressions and I like seeing like the environment that they're in and obviously it's a studio, they pay for it most of the time. And a small part of me is like, I think I've said this consistently, no one is doing what we're doing. No
Yeah.
one is doing what we're doing. And I'm like, that in itself is enough for me to think people need to see us. That's it. That's
Yeah,
it.
I agree with you. I really do agree with the fact that what we do and what we are looking to do, what we're expanding to do, it's really one of a kind. And
Yeah.
like you are saying, I think if people could see our facial expressions, see us, because when you see those clips, it's like, damn, it's really cute. And I like watching them myself. I like to see how people interact and, you know, I can visualize the whole process. But as you're saying, I guess for where we're at in this season of life right now, how we can continue showing up and serving the community is via the audio format, which we presently have been keeping up with. And, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully in the future, as we expand, we grow, and there becomes some sort of income to allow us to rent a studio space. Because as you're saying, these spaces require you to pay for them. You need a videographer. You can set up your phone, but you know, video editing is completely different from, you know, audio editing. This stuff requires, you know, a bit more of a team to assist you with.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I'm with you on that.
So I am now turning to, you know, the section which looks at managing our expectations. And one of the things that I would like to touch on, because I think it links on quite well from what we've been discussing, long form versus short form content, and then, you know, limitations around being an audio only podcast. How do we navigate the weight that comes with organic growth and has not been seen, acknowledged, or appreciated for our contributions and insights? Flared any of your Chiron wounding at any point?
Guys, I'm at this point of pregnancy where I have to write things down and
I
still
do.
ask Emily, like, what did you say? What was the question? Video podcast, people would see me writing frantic things. So maybe we're fine as audio only.
So I will go again. How do we navigate the weight that comes with organic growth?
How do we navigate the weight that comes with organic growth? I could be wrong, but I feel like we
Mhm.
navigate this very differently. I feel like we have different approaches. Because, as
Yeah.
I mentioned, the data, the analytics, the statistics of it all, I don't get wrapped up in, and I do plead ignorance with that. So, in terms of like our growth markers, it's only when you share something with me, then I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Mhm.
And I move on. So, I don't know what our growth looks like. So, I don't feel a weight with that as such because in my head, I'm not trying to push. Like you said, we're not trying to shove ourselves down people's throats. I just have this thought of it's reaching whoever it needs to reach. And I have this thought of what we have created and what we are creating is there on the internet forever. People discover things across years. And I kind of take comfort in the fact of we could get discovered in a couple of years' time. It could be tomorrow, because that's how the internet works. You never know at what point someone's going to discover you. So that is my kind of mentality when it comes to organic growth.
Mhm.
I think slash suspect your approach is different or your feelings are different. So maybe let's talk about that.
Yes, your spidey senses are right. I mean, I really like when you were speaking, my heart just felt warm. I felt the flutters, and I could see like the lovebirds and the love hearts around my head. Like, yes, I feel you, sister. And I know you already said this, but I'm on the opposite spectrum where it's like I feel like I'm literally breaking my heart because I think we are doing such a great job of what we do. And I'm not even to toot our own horns. And I think we've spoken about this. We are people who, we have suffered with self-esteem issues. So
Yeah,
for us to even acknowledge this,
yeah,
it even shows that we're taking great strides. And I see how even when stuff is going on in our own personal life, which would render us unable to record, we still find a way to make them possible. And I do break my own heart with metrics. I think I break my own heart with battling an algorithm that feels like it's against you. And I get it. It's a system. Recently, the whole social experiment stuff has been heavy in my mind, that we are living in a social experiment.
yeah,
So you have to, some people have the cheat code, some people know how to work with the algorithm. Again, we are not experts. I'm still figuring things out, in as much as I like to get hands-on with the digital side of things, the visibility side of things, and the promotion side of things. And I can see how some of the efforts have made improvements. However, I do break my heart, I think, when I realize that the reach feels like it's
yes,
suppressed. And at times it's like, in my spirit, I'm not that person to want to just, like, I can't force things down people's throats. Like, I don't feel comfortable. It's not who I am. But then when you see other people who are like forcing things and
mhm,
like content, and they're getting the views, they're getting the audience. Because essentially all we want is a community. We want an audience. We want to build and we want to establish it with people. There's times where I delete the apps. I'm like, I'm not looking at this. Goodbye. And then I can re-download it because I want to see the metrics again. And it's a yo-yo process for me. Like, there are times where I'm like, yes, I see where we're being recognized and seen and celebrated. And then there are times where I'm like, damn, it's tumbleweed. What's
mhm,
going on? Am I doing something wrong? So
mhm.
that's where I have those internal battles.
Yeah, and I really get that. And it's hard because, again, I think we're going to come on to this. I think the reason why I have that perspective that I shared in terms of the internet's forever, our stuff will land when it lands. I think I have that distance from it because I am not on social media and
Yes.
I'm not being pumped full of like sell, or content. I'm not in that consumerist bubble. So I think that's why I have this perspective, which you could argue whether it's good or bad, I don't know. But the one thing that I think I do feel or think about in terms of the not being seen Chiron stuff, it's more I would like people to comment, people to email. We have a future
Yes.
guest coming on, and I read the email where they acknowledged something within an episode that we recorded. And I thought, oh, that is so nice that someone has taken the time to listen and to share their perspective and to share feedback. And we have had people do that. And
Yes.
that part, and again, this links to that. It's not necessarily about high volumes of people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, is this reaching someone and is this touching someone in some sort of way? That's the part for me that I'm like, oh, because we don't know.
Yes, no, we don't. And you're really right. Like, even when I see the metrics like fluctuate and increase, it's like I can't even track. Like, okay, yes, I know there are certain platforms. Again, this comes with a subscription-based model where you can kind of see where, people are listening in from, and where that funneling system is happening. But just looking at generic statistics online, I don't really have that much understanding of, like, where did this person come across from us from? And as you're saying, if
Mm,
there's not really commentary, it's like sometimes it can feel like, and we've said this about our own personal endeavors, the creative work that we've done on platforms like Instagram, it can feel like you're speaking into the void, which just demotivates you. But I think, what keeps us going? I think the energetic work of us collaborating together, because I think if it was an individual thing, I don't know if I could still say the
mm.
same thing, you
True,
know?
very true. What about for the Chiron wounding for you? I feel like you've kind of touched on it actually.
Yeah, I think it's really the metrics. Like, I get
Yeah,
so in my head about the metrics. And especially when I know that we are delivering fine. Yes, we're not the top of the top when it comes to audio production and whatever, but we try and make sure that people can hear us. Even if there are issues with, post editing behind the scenes, we try and do the best that we can do to enhance the listener's experience. And I think even when it comes to pouring into episode descriptions or even mini clips, it's like I feel like right now on TikTok, we're being capped to about 70 people,
Is
and
it?
that's it. And I'm like, that wasn't the algorithm before. And you know me, I like to do research. So I think my Chiron wound, once I do a bit of research, it kind of makes sense in my head and helps me to stop overthinking. But I still am left with the big questions of, but why? And like I find that the most recent stuff that I've been uploading on our TikTok platform, for example, has just been capped at 70. Like it's not moving. And having read on Reddit, TikTok decides within the first few minutes of whether your content is worth being pushed out. And
Yeah,
that's how it gets pushed out into people's FYPs. But when you are relying on self distribution, you don't have a sort of marketing agency or an agent to, market what you're doing for you. It can be really demoralizing sometimes when it's like you just hit a flat
yeah,
line.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's where the wounding flares up for me in that
Makes
sense.
sense.
So we've been speaking about energy, but the next question really is about the types of platforms we decide to pour our energy and gifts on into, should I say. And is being selective about the platforms you share your work on something that should be discussed? Is it something that you need to literally experience as you're on these platforms and kind of filter out what's for you and what's not for you? And what happens when your body is signaling, that this isn't really a space where you're being appreciated, this isn't a space where you're being seen or held? Do you hold on to that platform, or do you decide to part ways?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I'll answer that question first. If you don't feel like a platform is serving your intention and greater vision, then just get rid of it. Like, I think you have to learn what platform you feel comfortable with and where you feel kind of good with. I think,
Mm,
like, because we're an audio only podcast, the thing that made sense the most was obviously being on like Spotify and then other ways to redistribute through RSS feeds. That made
yes.
sense. But then also audio only on YouTube then led to us doing shorts on YouTube, which made sense. And then you could put posts on YouTube. So again, that makes sense. But then where we've kind of had to kind of feel into is TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. We
Mm,
really had to kind of feel whether that is right for us. And sometimes I do think about Instagram and I think, hmm. But then I still have my
yes.
own personal kind of discomfort with the space as a whole. So I do unfortunately think it's a bit of trial and error. I think
Yes.
most marketing strategies or whatever will tell you you have to be on every single platform. Make it, you have to. That's the only way. That people must find you everywhere. And I get it. Like I get
Mhm.
it logically, but I don't necessarily know if that's 100% for everyone. I'm a bit in the air with
Mm.
that one, to be honest.
I mean, I can only echo and say that if you are just starting out, or even if you've been in the game, like we've been in the game since 2024 and we're still learning, we're still babies in this game, but spreading yourself thin everywhere
Yeah.
and knowing that you're not being acknowledged, seen, held, you're only draining yourself. And I think it then turns into resentment. And that's what I felt towards Instagram for a very long time. And I mean, I know Mimi isn't active on there, but even for myself as somebody who likes to dibble and dabble on Instagram because of the people that I met, like Mimi and other people that, are part of the homies, I feel that I still have that tie to Instagram, but I have a lot of resentment because I do think, when people talk about being shadow banned, they're not just saying it because they're delulu, but certain content is generally suppressed because
Yes.
this is how social programming goes. Like, and I understand that, yes, content needs to look a certain way. People prefer reels over, long written posts and la 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 la. But I think spreading yourself thin, going on all platforms, and then not really filtering out what is best for you and applying what someone else's guidance and advice is. And I know it sounds hypocritical because we are trying to guide you, but we're no shape or form trying to say you need to stick to one platform. We're saying,
Yeah.
here are the tools, but figure it out for yourself. See how your body feels. Do you feel tired when you go into a particular platform? Do you feel drained when you're on a particular platform? Or do you feel uplifted? Do you feel happy to create? And really listening to how those emotions, sensations, and feelings make you feel.
I completely agree. And I think what really helped us, and again, I think this was your guidance, your wisdom, was that because we were both on Instagram at the time of starting this,
Yes.
and we both decided to not post on our Instagram about our podcast, as in like our business.
Yeah.
Public Instagrams. We did not do this as a collaboration, and we've done like a couple posts where it's involved other people.
Yes.
We didn't do it as a collaborative post. We've created a whole new account that is representative of this is our brand. To me, it wasn't a pod, and these are the people behind it, rather than linking it to our accounts. And in some ways, I think that was a very good decision, because I think it's afforded us space to create without the perceived judgment from other people. So again, we had to really feel that.
And you're right. I think, that wisdom wouldn't have come through without us having discussions about how we feel about that platform. And I realized that we were able to create without feeling the pressure to, need to achieve a particular, I didn't even know about metrics too much. Like I knew that there were statistics and things like that, but I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, no, like now this so-and-so person isn't supporting, they aren't watching, because we were creating outside of that. And, by the time we did a collab post, we had done a good 4 episodes. We were already deep in. And I think we were comfortable with knowing that people would discover us as and when they do. And whatever we do to enhance our visibility, discoverability, will come as a bonus. But having that peace of mind, I think, is very important. And that's why we say being intentional about, not burning yourself out. Because if we had gone gun blazing, we would have been setting ourselves up for disappointment and heartbreak if, the people that, we have on our business profiles or pages weren't pouring into us the ways in which that we would jump to pause for them. So I think that's, I wish you guys could see Mimi's face, but I think that really summarizes. And I think, one thing I just want to touch on is that sometimes, going back to the disappointment that I feel, or the heartbreak, should I phrase it as that, is that input doesn't necessarily always guarantee output. As Mimi said, the bigger picture is in years to come. Like, there are people who, like, you see this a lot on TikTok, that someone will blow up an older person's YouTube profile account and say, guys, let's go and blow up this video and watch it. And then boom, it's on 5 million. You don't know what can happen in the course of years and months down the line. But even though you're in the season of creating and uncertainty about who is even listening to what you're producing, what you're creating, knowing that there is a bigger picture, a bigger goal, is something to keep hold of. So, I mean, before we round off, I would love to explore your analog journey, because I think it's something that intrigues me. And I think one of the first things that I would love for you to do is walk us through your decision to lead an analog life and how you balance, the responsibilities of self-distributing and marketing for the pod, but also being intentional about your social media usage. So we can break this up into 2 parts and start with the first part about walking us through your decision to lead an analog life.
I'm not completely analog. I'll start by saying that, because I am very much on Facebook and YouTube for my personal usage, not for business, like as an individual business. Obviously we're on platforms for our collaborative businesses manifesting.
Yay!
So I am not completely out of touch in that sense. However, I just got fed up, exactly like what Emily said, in terms of like, you feel like you're speaking into the void, you feel like you're kind of suppressed in terms of your content. But the thing that was kind of pushing me was the faux relationships and the inauthentic connections, despite having very good authentic connections that came out of it. The inauthentic connections and the inauthentic relations in order to promote oneself and in order to build, it just became too much for me to understand. And I couldn't wrap my head around why someone would be one way and then act another way, even though I get it in real life. But when it comes to the online stuff, it was messing with my head. And I just got to a point where I knew that I'm not I knew, or I know that I'm not the sort of person who would push content. I got to a point where I was like, well, I'll show up when I want to show up, and then that I just started showing up less. And then it got to a point where I was like, I don't have to be here. Like I don't have to be here. I don't want to be here. However, in recent months, my position on social media has changed because majority of the work that I do now, including and excluding Two Mutables in a Pod, is collaborative. And I haven't figured out, I haven't got the answer of how to adequately have an individual business page whilst also collaborating with the people who I collaborate with. So something I'm very mindful of, with not necessarily with us, but with another space that I work with, is I don't want to set up or reignite my profile, people to find me through my collaborator and try and approach me directly to work with them, therefore bypassing where they've met me and then potentially undercutting them. Like, I can't fathom that. And I can't figure out how people balance collaborating and also promoting themselves independently. So therefore, I've taken myself off of it. However, for both Two Mutables and a Pod and for the other space that I work with, I'm doing content behind the scenes. People just don't know. So it comes out, but under the brand. And it's taken me a while to figure out, because I don't want to be lazy. I don't want to not contribute to the things that are helping to promote my work and helping to promote, my collaborators' work. I'm inputting, but it's just not under my name. And I'm actually quite okay with that.
You know how you spoke about in your personal story, that, that whole epiphany about your creative codes
Yeah.
and being able, and like you said, you being okay with that and knowing that perhaps where you're at now in this season of life, it's that you aren't being called to necessarily go out there. Maybe the answers will come to you about how you do then establish your own entity as Mimi Makina and the work that you do in your business entity. But for now, maybe you are being called to do the work, the creative and spiritual work under this umbrella, under your collaborative umbrella, and also what you do outside of the pod. And maybe that's just what you need to do. And maybe you don't need to have the answer figured out for the other parts just yet. And when it's ready, it will come.
And again, I take comfort in the fact that maybe it won't come, because when I look at my 7th house ruled by Aqua and then my 11th house in Gemini, I'm sorry, none of that screaming, I need to do this shit by myself. It's screaming, we need to be with people. Like, we need to collaborate and we need to just have shared values, shared identities. Like, that's the thing that when I look at my chart, that's what I feel the most. And a part of it is, and I think maybe a part of the going quote analog was letting go of my ego, but it has to be me. I have to be the face, the name, all of it. Maybe I had to go through a bit of an ego shift in order to identify this is bigger, it's greater than me.
Wow. Maybe I had to go through an ego shift. And it's mad because, again, when you do your own thing, it's like you do think, I am the face of my brand. And I think that, even when I was heavily on Instagram, it's like you are at the forefront of it. But when you are now collaborating, you understand that it's partnership. And partnership means sharing. Partnership means coming together. Partnership also means that you don't undercut each other. And like you're saying, that's not your ethos, that's not your value, that's not who you are. But understanding your chart and knowing that you've got certain placements, certain house alignments that, lean towards collaborative working and being able to feel fulfilled through that. Like you're saying, although I said maybe the answer will come to you later, you just hit me with another angle and perspective that maybe it might not even come to me because this isn't my path and part of my destiny.
I don't think it is. And yes, there'll always be service things that I do individually, but I'm realizing that it comes through the collaborations, but also it comes outside of social media. Like, for a while, like, my thing is like word of mouth. That's my biggest currency, and I've had to become okay with that. And I think in this day and age where social media, AI is like literally everywhere, I think it can be hard to here and establish your path. So
Oh, wow.
that's a very long answer to the first question.
No, but it's an insightful answer. And I think, you didn't just arrive at that destination. Like we say, I think part of you having Jupiter and Virgo,
Yeah.
sorry, I have to link this back to the Astros, that you're on the quest to discovery. You're on the pursuit of finding what truth means to you. You are a truth seeker. And I think this is part of your journey of discovery. As you mentioned, your Jupiter is also retrograde. So I think a lot of this has been the internal processes that, is now coming to the surface. Like you're able to put words to them. You're able to articulate these things that have been remunerating within you. And I think that's really Jupiter speaking, and that being your sun ruler, the planet that rules your sun, and also your eighth house. I think this is part of that journey, knowing what, and I think, like you said, that filtration, that it's okay for you to maybe not revisit that part of yourself. And maybe that's part of yourself had to die.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if this was the second part of the question.
And so the second part of the question was, how do you balance self-distribution responsibilities and duties for the pod, but also remain intentional about your social media usage?
I mean, I'm not on, like, how do I say it? Like, I think the intention, like the way that I've approached it is heavily influenced by the structure that you've put in place. So I know certain date, certain thing needs to go online. And if I can, I'll pre-schedule it so that I'm not sitting there like in the energetic field of like consume, consume, consume. So I think the structure that you put in place helps massively because I know what targets I need to achieve, I guess.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not saying this from a perspective of I'm never on social media, because best believe I'm watching videos, like I'm scrolling in my own time. It's just I have a certain platform that I do it on because it feels less noisy in comparison to the other ones.
But you're following what feels like, what makes you feel.
Yeah.
Like, I think one thing that we have discussed is that being on Instagram, as you mentioned, that it's just a lot to fathom with the people who, were in certain circles, and then obviously the energetics of that platform. Whereas when I hear you speak about, the other platforms that you are active on, which you mentioned, Facebook and YouTube, it's like, it's still a place for you to feel light and also have fun on. Like, I think there are things that what you watch, what you send to me. There's things that you share with me that I'm like, no, you wouldn't share this, like, if this wasn't something that you enjoyed watching. And I feel like these are the spaces where you don't feel as stifled.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like I will stress, I'm grateful that we have this space where a part of my creativity can exist. And then through the other work that I do, my creativity still exists, but it's just not under my name solely. Like people wouldn't know, especially for like the other work that I do. People don't know if I've done a post. Well, now you can, because I've started doing audio recording. So you can, if you know my voice, you're going to know
who.
Like the work, my written work is on a website. Like that's not fast social media content, but that's me.
And that's your voice.
Yeah, that's my voice, and I like it there. So I'm grateful that I have the opportunities through the podcast and through the other space to be able to do that. So yeah.
I like that though. It feels safe.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, considering how much I didn't feel safe on social media before. And like, it's been a year and a half not being on Instagram and TikTok. Although TikTok, anyways, another story. It's to feel safe within this work. However, I do also wonder on the flip side, because you're on social media, albeit periodically. I know you said there's times when you delete and then there's times when you go through it. I do wonder on the flip side, how do you relate to that? But then also, do you then feel like you have to do more as a result of me not being there?
So I realized that I do have to, it's particularly with, how do I phrase this without giving too much away, with how we desire to grow and evolve. But even just where we are presently, I understand and recognize that I do have to put in the work when it comes to social media, because one of the things for me is I don't want you to be on a platform that you're not comfortable with. And in as much as I'm periodically off certain platforms, I can go there when it's related to the pod. And I think how I've now reframed this in my mind is that this is giving me experience, because, 10th house Gemini ruled, Mercury ruled. Like, I'm really here to find my way through the digital space. And I do have a liking for marketing. I generally do enjoy learning how to, find the nooks and crannies around this area. So I
Yeah.
acknowledge that, yes, there is more of a, I want to say responsibility or weight for me to carry when it comes to the promotion, the marketing, and the social media sense.
Mm.
However, I've learned to take this as a teaching experience. And I know, I guess, a playground for me to trial things out, get things wrong. Like, we used to do recordings. We used to release our, what's it called? Our mini clips midweek. And then we were like, I think there was one time we was like, it might work if we do it on the Sunday instead. And I was like, you know what? I'm happy to opt and try that out. Let's see if we can do that. And I feel like there's room for me to trial and error things out that I wouldn't get. I feel like I'm almost in an internship that's not like deemed or titled an internship, because I'm able to play around, I'm able to learn, I'm able to do these things. Yes, sometimes the pressure does feel real, because it can feel like the weight of promotion is like, are we going to be seen? Are we going to be, are people going to discover us?
Yeah.
However, I also have to bring myself back to the drawing board and be like, I'm one person, I'm trying to do it. What's going to happen is going to happen. But I know that if I tell you that, okay, so and so thing, I'm doing this and this and this, you will still support me behind the scenes. It's just
Yeah.
that these particular areas aren't places where, and because I understand that feeling, I don't want my co-collaborator to feel that type
Mm.
of way. And I don't want you to be exposed in places. And that's why I was very intentional about us even being on Instagram in the first place, because I'll share your sentiments wholeheartedly, even
Mm.
though I love that space. And I think it would be damning, although I know that maybe, again, it's in the back of my mind that, in the near future, maybe we might have to establish a presence on there. But
Yeah.
that's something that, I'm willing to figure out as we go, and it will come up in a conversation.
For sure.
But I think that's, yeah, I understand that the responsibility is there. I enjoy it for the most part. I think I even said to you, I enjoy making the mini clips. Like, I actually enjoy creating from that space. There
Mm.
are times where the pressure feels on, and
Mm.
there are times where I'm like, okay, I feel like I've got this under control. But ultimately, my desire and wish is for us to be discovered. And I think that's the fuel that keeps the fire burning when it comes to self-distribution and marketing for me.
Yeah, I understand that. What I will say though is like, if ever I return to Instagram, it would only be under our brand. I wouldn't even like my
Yes.
personal account is like it's dead, it's gone. But like for me, it's
Mhm.
like I can see how it makes sense.
Mhm.
But also, I would love just a clean slate.
Yes.
Just a clean slate, just being able to just be, and then whoever again organically finds us through the content finds us through the content, and
Okay.
like I'm okay with that. But what I think I wasn't okay with was trying to figure out how do we balance the two.
You are right. Sorry to no interject, but like you mentioning that as two separate identities, I can understand why it was like, how do we balance the two?
Mm,
But
mm,
as one, it's like, I understand, because quite like my page, Your Favorite Gemini, that was a way for me to have a clean slate away from
yeah,
my private page, where I was like, hell to the no, I don't want to do this on here. I don't want these people to know. I want to start
mm,
afresh.
mm,
And as you was talking earlier on, that whole idea of don't be afraid to create a page from afresh, it was
yeah,
something that was coming to mind. And you
yeah,
just saying it now is confirmation of
yeah,
that.
totally. Same wavelength.
And I feel like you've answered my last question, because I was going to ask, like, do you ever see yourself returning to platforms like Instagram and other social media platforms? But I feel like indirectly, I mean, you're more than welcome to answer it again, but I feel that you have kind of, yeah, I was surprised by that, to be honest.
Really? I think
Yeah.
about it a lot, but that's again, it's like I know I kind of said I don't really think about like the
Hmm.
metrics and stuff like that. But when I do think about it, I'm like, I can see that this would gain reach or gain some sort of traction through
Traction.
Instagram. I think,
Yes.
although like I don't know, I don't think we mentioned we split the platforms between us at the moment. So I do YouTube, Facebook, Emily does TikTok, Substack. Um, we both write long form on Substack, but in terms of
Hmm.
looping the actual episodes, that's Emily that does that. But I do sometimes think, Instagram potentially has that space for us as a collaboration. Yeah, that is the answer.
You have answered that. I mean, I know we'll talk about this privately, but that's very interesting. And I know I'm taken back to a certain revelation that you had around that. I think you can I share it?
I don't know what it is.
Okay. Okay, let me share it. So I remember you saying that you had like a dream that we were on live, but we was doing like a birth
Oh
chart reading.
yeah,
Yeah. So it just took me back to that.
I forgot
Wow.
that. But yeah, it's funny because actually when I was saying about Instagram and like the only way I'd go back to Instagram is through us, what I was seeing was like our DMs and like people actually talking and engaging with us because they found our work. And
Oh my
again, that's the thing that
yeah.
we are desiring is that connection and community. And that's what I was seeing when I mentioned that. So it's out there, it's there as a possibility. I think it's just again allowing the space to pivot.
I like that. I do. To anybody who is listening, pick what resonates and allow what doesn't to fly. If
Yeah.
you find parts of this conversation doesn't resonate and you're like, you know what, I want to do all platforms, we
Mhm.
would like to encourage you to follow what your spirit is saying to you because again you're the person who was birthed with that vision, you were given that vision, and you
Yeah.
know there's a quote that says that your calling isn't a conference call. So in as much as we are sharing certain things, like your calling could be very specific to you, so in no shape or form are we seeking to deter you from the vision that you have, but we simply wish to guide and assist people who are like us creating independently in the digital space. And I think, you know, one thing that I would like to round this off with, I think it was sometime in April where I remember being on Spotify and then boom, the stats were going sky high, like whoo. And I was like, what's going on here? And you know me, I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook. However, I'm slowly overcoming that for the pod. And I recall people on Buzzsprout where they were like, has anybody else had a surge in like listening downloads
Oh,
from these particular regions? And it was like Vietnam, South Korea, a few other ones in East Asia. And, you know, some people were questioning and like curious to know, is this AI harvesting data, information from human podcasts? So I would love to know, what's your hot take on AI harvesting? And how do you feel about AI stealing information and knowledge from human podcasts?
I hate this question. I know this question's actually making me feel physically sick. You know what? Like Emily has seen my journey and my tussle with AI. And I can see the benefits of it. And it's funny, I was talking to one of my clients today about it. And I love how AI can support organization and just the general executive functioning or dysfunction that some people may experience. I love that it can help people in that respect. But I find that question scary. I'm very sorry. But the thought that our likeness is being taken, no.
Mm.
I can't fathom it. I cannot fathom it. I haven't got a good answer, I'm afraid. I just don't like it.
And I think that's perfectly okay not to just like it. I think to me, I'm quite, I think I'm of the same school of thought that it's scary, but it's not something that I am like, yeah, oh my gosh, I can't wait for AI to take more because it's worrying for me.
Yeah.
What's happening with this data and information? Keyword, where's it going? And how is it getting transformed? What is it being transformed into? As you said, our likeness, our image, our voice, our sound, our knowledge, these are things that, you know, again, essentially is our intellectual property, although it's not, you know, we've not trademarked it or we've not done things in a legal
It's
sense.
trademarked with God. It's trademarked with our ancestors. Don't you dare anyone listening try and take it. It's trademarked, all right?
Amen. From an astrological perspective, particularly with Uranus, you know, being in Gemini right now, in the earlier stages of this transit, what do you think AI has for us in store in relation to its advancement and how we see the future of podcasting in the next few years and decades?
Do you know what? Again, I don't have a full answer for this. However, yesterday I was on the go yesterday, but I saw on Facebook Umi Genevieve, I think that's how you pronounce her
Yes,
name,
yeah.
post about Uranus and Gemini, and she specifically, and I loved this post, she specifically spoke about the podcasting arena for mutable signs and how beneficial it can be for us to be in this sector. And I was like, we're ahead of the curve. I love that for Emily and I. Love that. And it gave me hope. That actually maybe there is scope for expansion, maybe there is scope for development within this space for those of us who have mutable energy.
Yes.
So even though like I have my kind of discomfort and all these things with AI, I feel like that gave me enough hope. So I'm gonna send the post to Emily. It needs to be linked in some way, or seen or shared.
No, I would definitely include the link to it as I bring this episode to a close. One of the things that I wanted to ask you as the hot seat question is, what does growth and evolution look like for two mutables in a pod? And reflecting on the very fact that we released our first recording in November 2024. Name one thing that you are proud of since collaborating in this space together, and one thing that you'd like to see improve over the coming months or years. So we can break this up into two parts, and I'm more than happy to repeat the question again.
So I guess I'll start with what I'm proud of. We've mentioned this, but I'm proud that it's not just a consistency thing, it's the fact that nobody knows how much we have gone through individually behind the scenes through just in the span of us recording. So from November 2024 till now, we have gone through so much upheaval personally, and we have shown up. But the deeper answer to that is like, whenever we've shown up, we always have like a catch-up session before, and we always check in with one another. Oh my God, these hormones want to make me cry. We always check in with one another, and it's are you actually okay to record today? Do you want to be here? Are you good type of thing? And we have both consistently said, I want to be here. This helps me. Like, this is part of what is going to soothe me in the midst of all the chaos. And I'm so proud that that is an experience we get to have. Like, I think that's beautiful. No matter how hard it is, no matter the struggles to get here, all the tech issues. The fact that we both think, no, this is a release. You've said that several times, that this is a release for us.
Therapy. Like, honestly, you saying soothe, and I think, and that's why I said, like, despite the very fact that life might have been lifing, and then you're thinking, oh my God, the episode, like, there have been times where I'm like, oh, the recording. Oh my God, it's in the back of my head. But, you know, so much is happening, it's hectic. But when I get into that space, when I get into the flow, I'm like, damn, this has been so releasing for me and for yourself as well. And that is something that I love that you've just highlighted that, because, you know, in as much as we could talk about the consistency that we have been striving, irrespective of what's going on, the fact that it's still providing an outlet for us as storytellers, I respect that.
Impeccable. What was the first bit of your question? Sorry.
Okay, what does growth and evolution look like for two mutables in a pod?
Yes, okay. Without giving too much away, growth and evolution for us is about community, would be my simplest answer. And establishing a community, and we have various ways in which we foresee this happening. It's community. I was like, how do I say it? It's community, and we have that shared vision. We are working on the building blocks for that right now, and I think 2027 will be the springboard for that. So yeah, what about yourself?
Oh my God, do you know what you did say in 2027? And damn, like, we started in 2024, and it's like,
right?
And I think one thing that signals that we are on, and there's not necessarily a right track or wrong track, but one thing that signals that we are in alignment is that we are growing. There's evidence of growth and evolution. And, you know, without giving too much away, as you said, I think above everything else, I want this to be a safe haven. a
Mm.
space for people to be seen. I want people to be able to relate. But most importantly, and I've always said this, that at the core, what we do, and I know we might not term ourselves as that because, you know, in the traditional sense, we might not appear that way, but we are teachers, we
Mm.
are truth seekers, we are people who are on a constant journey and discovery in pursuit of the truth and what the truth looks like for us on our own terms. And I think that's why, for me, being able, just echoing what Mimi said, being able to create a space where there's the home for that
Mhm.
brings so much fulfillment. And that's like, even when I don't have much to give in my own personal life, I've always said to Mimi, like, I'm key procrastinator, but when it comes to the pod, you can ask me at 2 a.m. I'll be there to do it.
You
And
have
that
the
just,
goods on when it comes to the podcast.
I've got the energy, I've got the passion. Like,
Yes.
even if we go without recording, even no matter what happens, like, I can still show up. And I'm like, damn, Emily, if I did this in academics, maybe I'll be further ahead. But do you know, it's like, that to me is what I see growth and evolution looking like for us.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I am proud of since collaborating together is how much we are learning, how
Mhm.
much we are honestly practicing what we're preaching. Even when we are getting head butted left, right, and center, like, if there's anything that I want you to take away, is that whatever you do and whatever you pour out into the world, let your work be a living testament of the work that you're preaching to others to follow. You need to follow the path of the preacher. Like, you need to be able to practice what you preach. And I think this has been a real testing ground and a learning curve for us to really practice what we are preaching to other people. And I see that in decisions that we have. I see that in reflections. I see that when we're bouncing back and, we're like, okay, so what does this mean? And we're like, no, you need to trust the energetics. And I'm like, damn, like, this is what we are preaching.
True.
And I think for me, that is the proudest thing that I could be proud of, that we're not just impacting others, we're impacting ourselves. We are healing ourselves through this transformative space.
So, God, it's so real. Yeah, my eyes are welling up because you're so right, because there's so much that we have that we've learned together through this space,
Mhm.
that we have created through this space, that has challenged us differently and pushed us to show up differently in our personal lives. So, yeah, grateful.
Thank you so much for sharing so much information and insight into our journey. And I think we have both brought out elements that, we've learned from, still learning from, and uh going to learn more from in the future. Sorry guys, had to pause and think about what I was going to say. But
Mm.
I can't thank our audience, our listeners, the people who listen, the people that tune in. We would love to hear from you. Again, please do not feel afraid to comment, or if you don't feel like commenting publicly, please know that our inbox is open and you can email us at twobeautableinapod@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And we don't bite. We really don't bite. If you don't hear from myself, you will hear from Mimi. But we've never really shared our behind the scenes process. And I hope that this provides insight and something that you can relate to if you're on your own creative journey, exploring and discovering where it is that you are heading. And, there is no rush, there is no final end destination. In everything that we've discussed, know that your path and your journey is appointed to you, and you are not rushing, you are not competing, you're not needing to pick up pace to do things in accordance to timelines that are not for your spirit or for your purpose. And I think that's what I really want to end this session, this therapy session on. And I hope that you stay good, you stay well, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode recording. Until next time, bye for now.